for all of the events that we were participating in. They were really focused on how do they bring value to each of their stakeholders to make sure that they were enabling those connections and making a real experience.
Welcome to the Convene podcast. My name is Maggie, digital media editor at Convene. Today I'm joined by Marc Ghafoori, who is Senior Vice President Brand Strategy at Heritage. Marc is passionate about strengthening and redefining the brand image of Heritage while also advocating for sustainability and inclusivity in all aspects of event planning and production. Marc, it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Tell us about the kinds of events you've been involved in.
So really, we participate and help facilitate events in every sector that exists, whether it's, health, tech, finance, religious, public events, you name it. We're helping to facilitate those items. So we see things in a really, really broad spectrum of areas within the greater economy of business events.
That's awesome. So you have a good overview of what kinds of changes have happened recently in in-person events. So can you speak about that? Post-pandemic, what has changed?
Yeah, I would say there's been a polarization towards people coming together and wanting to have real experiences, I would say, more so than before. Before the pandemic, you might have seen events that were trying to do that, but after the pandemic, I feel like it really put people's mind into focus of what they were really truly trying to have at the event, and that was experiences. And people were doing that prior to that, but it was really amplified after everybody went through the experience that they did. 21, you really saw like a really, really big ramp up with that for all of the events that we were participating in. They were really focused on how do they bring value to each of their stakeholders to make sure that they were enabling those connections and making a real experience.
Have you seen it in some sector more than in other? Certain sectors to be more like experience oriented?
I would say it's less tied to sectors, but it's more tied to the kind of financial ability for folks to be able to pull that together, because not all organizations have the mental kind of bandwidth to be able to execute some of those things and to put like someone into that position to focus solely on that. Organizations are sometimes just trying to get their event through the door, through whatever means necessary, and sometimes that's something that falls by the wayside. But it's at least something that's in mind for a lot of those folks that are going through that process now, because they personally experienced that themselves and want to have that show through. And I mean, the data that's coming from exhibitors and their stakeholders, if they're doing those polls and if they're pulling that data, it kind of leads them towards that for what's being more effective.
Yeah, budgets definitely kind of shape the outcome of the event, right?
Oh, it definitely does. But I mean, there's strategies that you can do at all scales. It's just a matter of focusing on that and making sure that that's actually within the parameters that you're really trying to attack the event. Yeah.
And what are the things planners are looking for from contractors now?
I would say, it's a lot of the same. It hasn't necessarily changed in terms of what they come to a GSC for, general service contractor for. On that side, they're looking for someone who can, at the end of the day, execute on what was being asked and do it within the timetable that's required. And in doing so, they want to do that with a partner. Like, some people treat it as a transactional and other people treat it as a true partnership to get that event through the door. As a GSC, we do some things that aren't necessarily as sexy. We have the tables, carpet and things like that. But there's other things throughout the spectrum that we tackle too that are kind of behind the scenes that are more interesting and more satisfying. Some of those services, like just asking those questions of like, what can you do to really amplify experience by just rearranging the floor plan, by simplifying the processes that are involved with the other vendors that are associated with the event, whether it's on the main stage or your AV vendor, your specialty decorator, or even floral. Like some of those things, by doing them right and thinking about them methodically, can really make a huge difference for what you do across the event. So an oversimplification is that, we don't do too much. We do things on the physical side, and we're a hammer to a nail, but we make sure that we find the right tool to be able to build what we're trying to build. So we don't use that hammer for a screw or something like that.
And you mentioned timetables. Has this changed? I know that, post-pandemic timelines were kind of really strict and very, very short. Has this changed? Do you have now a bit more of a room to operate?
Yeah, I would say things have definitely leveled off post 2020. After that point when the lights were turned back on, or the spigot was opened, whichever analogy you would use there, it was like drinking through a fire hose, basically, instead of your normal flow. You would get show planners that would reach out, and their event is 3-4 weeks away. You would get some people that were reaching out, and their event is like 3 months away for a major national event, and that was because of several different reasons. It would be they got an initiative to really push forward on that event from their stakeholders, and they knew that they needed to have it happen, whether it's financially driven or that networking or what have you. And then the other side of it is if their other contacts just were no longer there, or the company that they were reaching out to didn't exist anymore. So they were scrambling, just trying to find somebody to help facilitate the needs that they had. Thankfully, that's over for the most part. You don't see that very much anymore. I would say it's gone back to that normal planning cycle of 9 months to 18 months for some of these organizations. So you can really go through that full process, the full planning process, making sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and whatnot there. It was a challenge, but it was also kind of fun coming back from no events to all of the events all at this all right away there.
Yeah, well, fun.
Yeah, fun's a word to use. Fun's a word to use.
Yeah. And that was like all these shifts also happened because of lack of talent, right? The whole industry was very affected
Yeah.
in this sense. And do you think that has improved? And what are your biggest challenges when you're hiring new talent?
Yeah. So I don't remember what article it was, but it talked about like a third of the workforce was removed by either them retiring or leaving the industry altogether and going to other sectors. So it created like this big void of like that knowledge gap. Everybody knew it. Like I'm not telling you anything you don't know right now. But what was kind of unique about how things progressed was that you had to pull people from outside of the industry to be able to fill those seats, or you had to train somebody to fill those seats from somebody that was like fresh out of college, fresh into the workforce or what have you. And those challenges that started in like 21 when things got turned back on and this machine got into motion again. We've had a couple of years under our belt to be able to build up some of the talent over that course of time, and that's definitely been tamped down. We tackled that by really laying heavily into processes and training modules, because we knew like through the pandemic that once things got going again that it was going to go fast. And we paired that up with really leaning into recruiting and being able to source and find those few talented individuals that are out there that everyone's trying to grab onto and bring them in. If you don't have those two things paired up, you weren't going to be successful. And that was like that secret formula that was really working on our side. So like everybody was saying, I can't find people. We can't do it. We were doing okay. We were still struggling with, I would say, more of a green workforce in like 21, but we really quickly ramped that up, and it's been much, much better. We're seeing like, again, back to like a normal cadence of hiring, picking up new business and adding team members that are more in a sustainable pace rather than just like a, throw things at it and see what sticks kind of scenario.
Yeah. And speaking about talent, what inspired our conversation was your new facility in San Diego. So
Yeah.
what made you pick the city?
So San Diego was something that we had been thinking about for a few years. We had a large round of events that run through San Diego on a continuous basis. They cycle through the city just because San Diego kind of sells itself. But it's definitely not like the whole reason of why we picked San Diego to go there, just based on the operational benefits. It was really based on San Diego's culture within the business events industry and how they really welcomed everyone. And there's other markets that do that too, a couple that we have branches in, but San Diego really, like, at every level, welcomed us for the events that we were taking there with open arms. From the CBC to local hotel contacts to the labor that we utilized there locally, everyone was just super easy to work with, very, very knowledgeable. And that actually is a big component too, is that knowledgeable workforce that's retained there after 2020. That's big. That was a big reason. And it's like we can lean on that workforce that's there in that city without having to transplant and move team members there to really have that component of what heritage is there locally. We can lean pretty heavily onto the talent that's there and be able to layer on top of that with what we do as a general service contractor and a service provider.
And what skills do you feel are becoming more relevant now in the industry?
I would say the skills that are relevant, that one again is kind of the same, but the only thing that's different is AI. I would say is throwing like a sprinkling of the need for staying up on the times and where things are, because it's like the Wild West. There's so much going on. So like you just don't know where it's going to go or what you can do, and everybody's kind of attacking it from every different direction at the same time. But you start to see a pattern kind of emerging on what the best use case scenario is for that. It's not unlike handing things over, but it's trying to make what you do better and faster and more efficient. And the people who have been using it are most functional, and you see them outperforming or outpacing other people. And it's not like this growth that is two times. It's more like a growth that's like 10 times of what your capabilities of being able to execute things on. So as long as you stay organized, that's the thing that's really, I would say, standing out. And I know AI is all over the place, everywhere, everyone's talking about it, but if you have the ability to actively listen to what people are saying and then translate that into something that's executable within AI, those two paired together are like the key assets that kind of form success for what we do in the business events. And that has been there minus AI, that active listening component and being able to turn it into action.
You contributed to our AI cover story last year. So how actively are you using AI in your day-to-day?
I have it running like on one of my three screens at all times. Basically, it's always there. I'm constantly in it and working with it to help expedite my day. I use ChatGPT primarily for what I do, and a little bit of image generation from there for kind of spitballing and moving some ideas along. But yeah, it's primary function of my workflow for sure. Yeah.
Using AI, have you seen like this 10 times exponential growth or improved productivity in your day-to-day? Or is it more of like, yeah, things are moving a bit faster, but you feel you can do more?
I would say in situations where I'm communicating internally and externally, I will usually run it through a couple of custom GPTs based on what I'm actually using. And by doing that, I see that exponential growth, because instead of spending, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes on writing an email, I can cut it down into just a couple of minutes. I just spit in what I'm actually looking to say. It returns something back to me, and then I take that and reword it and put it into the message, and just like a super fast like that. And that's real time savings. I don't have to get into the weeds of brainstorming. That brainstorming component is the biggest time saver there, that it really helps to alleviate with a lot of the communication style. I haven't gone too heavily into the graphic generation component. nothing more than like icon development or just simple images. I seem to be finding dead ends whenever I dive into that, and I don't have time to dive into that at the moment. I just keep putting that onto the back burner. I'm waiting for the next GPT to come out, and maybe that'll solve all the problems I've been encountering myself. But I can't necessarily wait for that. I know.
You should try Claude AI.
Oh, really? What's that one?
Well, I just find it better for business stuff. If you run stuff by Claude, like you can create a presentation, upload it in Claude, even in free version, and ask it for a very concrete feedback. So say, act like my VP or my C-suite, look at this presentation, tell me where it falls short. Is this message coming across? Where does it fall short? If you're very concrete in the asks, I feel that Claude actually gives much better feedback than ChatGPT.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's interesting to compare. I know the paid version of Claude, everybody's kind of that I'm following and learning AI stuff from. Everybody is really like, yeah, the paid version of Claude is the next best thing. But yeah, I'm not that far. But I'm definitely impressed by its business acumen, if you can say it like that for an AI.
Yeah. I found like on ChatGPT, if I built a couple of GPTs to really like focus it within several different roles and several different like review processes, like what you're talking about, and it's been okay, good enough, I would say. I would definitely be interested to see what others are out there. I've dove so deep into GPT. I'm like, feel like it would be painful to like pull myself back out and try to re-inject, which I think they figured out their money generating, ecosystem based off of that.
For sure they did.
Sticky ecosystem that'll get you. They got that.
Yeah.
They got that down.
Yeah, I also link Claude AI in the show notes just for anyone else that's curious or haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
So we're speaking a lot about talent, and I'm curious, are you mentoring someone right now, and are you being mentored as well?
So not to lay it on heavy for Heritage, but it's the only thing I can apply it to for this one. I would say my mentor throughout the last decade has been Ryan Yem here at Heritage, the president for Heritage. He's a very active leader. He's not somebody who is just got his feet up and letting the rest of the team run things. He's in it every day, and I love that. It's that hands-on approach that really like works its way through everything that we do at Heritage. And like I said, I'm not trying to lay it on for Heritage, but this is the only application that I have because I'm in here like 90% of the time. And then I would say I'm not particularly mentoring someone other than the direct reports that I have that are reporting to me. And I would say that still does apply because of the way that we train and the way that we pair people for success here at Heritage is by pairing them with a team leader that can help them grow both personally and professionally, and not try to put roadblocks in front of them, but try to like accelerate them. So if somebody's really good at what they do, try to amplify that. If they're trying to look to go somewhere, then they have the ear of their team leaders and a career development plan to pair that with to try to like put them on a course for success. Those are the biggest ones. I'm not trying to plug Heritage. I swear that's the only thing that I have to apply to that because it is where we are. That's what we do.
That's very fair. And what are some of the topics that are standing out currently in these conversations? So you said it's very personalized, but are there anything that kind of we can group together that stands out to you?
I don't know, that one's kind of hard. I would say it's like transparency and the ability to talk openly in both directions and being able to talk through problems to be able to find some of those solutions that may not have been apparent, right away. Talking about what the real challenges are for that individual, whether they're really excelling at this or they're really falling on their face for this, and talking openly and honestly about those things so that you can work towards something that is to the best of their potential. That transparency, that openness, that honesty in those conversations, that is completely key for that being successful and like a real mentorship. Otherwise, it's peacocking, it's inflating your chest, and it's not real at that point.
I think one more addition to this honest and open conversation, creating the safe environment as well, is empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've written something very interesting about empathy on LinkedIn that I think I should link to for people to read. So how do you keep your empathetic filter high enough when you attend events? And do you always give a chance? And when do you skip, quote unquote?
Yeah. So this is one that I really like, actually. So I always try to have a conversation with as many people as I possibly can. Because at the end of the day, at the core of what we do is in the business events industry, we're all oriented towards services and service offerings. Some people have physical things, some people have digital, some people have neither, and they're just like organizing ideas and businesses. But at its core, we're all offering that service. And if you're not talking to people and you're not open to what people are trying to sell you on, and we're all selling each other, like at the end of the day, in one form or fashion. And if you're not open to that, then you're not open to something that might be extremely innovative tomorrow. By skipping over that conversation today, you're missing out on what that could be tomorrow. So that is something that I always strive to just, no matter how much I'm being sold to try to at least have that conversation. And then on the subject of what we were just talking about of transparency, if there's a misalignment on what their product or what their service is offering, then I'll try to stop them ahead of time to not waste anybody's time and say, like, look, this not really in our wheelhouse, but this person over here might be a good person for you to be able to talk to at XYZ company. If they can't be a real solution internally for us to be able to utilize, I try to repoint them to somewhere else that might be beneficial. These people are all human. We're all humans talking to each other and communicating with each other. We have a task to do and we're trying to do something. And if we're open to communicating and being transparent, then we can do some stuff that's pretty cool.
I definitely agree with you on that. And yes, we're always selling something. Even when we're speaking to one another, we're, in a sense, trying to sell our ideas to the other person or just open them up to our worldview and how we see things. So I just giving another version of a hard sell, right? It's not always a hard sell. Sometimes it's much softer than that. And how do you storytell based on data in your work? I know you're big on storytelling.
Yeah, that's another good one. So I love data because it's like a crystal ball to see the future if you're looking at it right. The challenge is to really like have enough data to be able to tell an accurate and like compelling story. With just a few data points, you maybe can't tell a whole story, and it might be something that most people aren't really they're not willing to listen to. So you really have to like pull in as much as you possibly can from the kind of topography of the landscape of what we do to be able to have that story told. And then with that data, really you just have to dive into it and generate reports, create an organization to that, whether it's arbitrary at first, something will form itself in the process of trying to understand it. But you just have to you have to throw yourself at it, try to find some pattern that emerges there between, client interaction and what your product is and how that's being used. One might morph the other. You might change your client, you might change your partners that you try to sell, your product might change in the process as well. And you can only do that through evaluating the data and looking at how things are being used, across the board.
Do you feel the industry is doing a good enough job?
Yes and no. The digital side of things is at an extreme advantage over the physical event side of things, which is at an extreme disadvantage. The physical event side of things, we have to physically set up and take down data tracking mechanisms, equipment in venues whenever we're looking to actually achieve those things through RFID, through Bluetooth or what have you for different tracking methods. So it's a little bit difficult to be able to get that granular data that you need for going down to the individual. And it's also like a privacy issue where a lot of people may not be willing to do that. So we have to show the value in sharing that data, just like people have done with Google, with Apple, with any of those other service providers that are not within the business events industry, but talk about what value we can bring by sharing that data. And that's how we can be most successful, or more successful, I should say, with how we do things. And I've seen it from big organizations like corporate events to associations down to smaller ones. And most are really just like, they're not attacking it from what I see as being the most optimal way, because there's just too much friction to be able to collect the data across the board. You can only do so much in so little time. And you've got a tiny window to install your event. You can only set up and facilitate so much there. It's not a permanent installation at the end of the day. Most of the time. Most of the time it's not. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And one personal question, what keeps you inspired about the events industry? But I see you're always with a huge smile on your face, no matter how much work you have. So what keeps you inspired?
I would say the constant work. I find joy in the moment, and I feel like that's what keeps me inspired. Is like this, what we're doing is never ever going to be done. Even though you have an event and it's going to happen on January 22nd, and that event comes and goes, but you're planning the next one by the time that one's over, and it's this animal that never really takes form or never really takes shape, and it's always being defined and redefined. And you've got people getting swapped in and swapped out from the different organizations that are participating in it, and maybe different companies are swapping in and swapping out. So it's always dynamic, it's always changing, and that's where I get the enjoyment from, is that challenge every single day of knowing I'm not going to walk in and punch my time card and do the same thing and then punch it and go home, and like, no, I don't want that. I want something that challenges on a daily basis to figure out, like, where's my personal and my business life, where's that barrier created, because it's so bled over. Like, there's no ability to be able to differentiate the two. It's so intertwined. And that I would say is like something that really drove people in the business events industry in like 21, 22 is like, you saw the people that really loved it. It's in their blood. Like, you had people that left the industry just to get a paycheck for a little bit, and they came right back because they couldn't get away. Can't take the trade show out of the person. But yeah, that's where I get inspiration, is in all of the dynamic elements of it.
So what are you most looking forward to personally and professionally?
Personally, I'm looking forward to it. So I've got a couple of small kids, 4.5 and, gosh, soon to be 1.5. And going on a vacation with family, traveling so much, one of the benefits is you rack up a lot of points, and you can be able to do that. You can take the family on a vacation, and it's air quotes free, but you've paid for it with all the travel that you've done. So that's something we're looking forward to, is maybe like Disney in the foreseeable future. But yeah.
Nice. And professionally?
Professionally, I mean, I'm always looking for opportunities to grow. And I wasn't at PCMA CL because of the birth of my daughter a couple of years back, and that was a really big FOMO moment, not being there. So I really look forward to every PCMA event. I'm not blowing smoke, like, I know this is PCMA and all of that, but I really look forward to it because it brings everybody together from every different corner of the industry, and everybody, like, it's just a big mind meld. So it's like, it's a really good opportunity to just like test the waters, have those conversations that are unique. That's how you and I met, like, was at a PCMA event. So it's one of those opportunities professionally that I always look forward to, because you don't know where the hell it's going to go, and it could go to something that's extremely fruitful. It could go nowhere, and then maybe that sprouts up into something, several years down the road, and maybe it doesn't. You just made a good friend that you had drinks with or something, and that's good enough. Yeah.
That's very true. And wrapping this conversation up, was there anything we didn't mention and we should address?
I don't think so. We covered most of the stuff that I had in my notes for stuff to talk through.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I love it.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, Do give us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more industry insights, visit pcma.org/convene. Until next time.